Okay, thanks a lot for joining us this month for our April 27 meetup. My name's Simon Waite. For those interested, I'm wearing the mic because we live stream our meetups and they're available as video on demand later if you want to watch them on YouTube. So if you go to either our meetup site or our YouTube channel, you'll be able to catch up on these later if you want. This is the first one we've done for a while like this, but if you go back and have a look, you'll see some from last year and the year before. Appreciate you coming out this evening, given the relatively inclement weather. Bryan, who's talking tonight, talked last year, and his memory of that evening is that Sydney was effectively under some form of monsoon condition. So I apologise to Bryan for the inclement weather that he's experiencing yet again in his visit to Sydney. It the sun does come out here periodically, just not at this time of year. So as you will have already discovered, we do pizza and beer, just a bit of a social get together. There'll be a chance to have a chat and a beer later, depending on how long we run this evening. Generally try and finish by 8 o'clock. Nothing stops you from retiring to a local bar if you want to have a chat with fellow attendees. I probably won't be in attendance and I certainly won't be funding it, but please feel free to go ahead and do that if you want. We'll start by having a look at what's new in Azure since we last got together. Our last meetup was back in February. We were lucky enough to have some of the integration team out of Redmond in town after Ignite, so we had a couple of the guys come and talk to us. We didn't record that one, unfortunately, but it was a good evening. Hopefully we'll get to do that again in the not too distant future. And then our main speaker this evening is Bryan Soltis from Kentico, who's going to talk about Azure Functions and how you can use them to build your evil or not so evil empire. Just out of interest, anyone here uses your functions yet to do stuff? Okay, cool. Yep. Well, hopefully Bryan has, given he's going to talk to us about it. I'd be a bit worried if you hadn't put your hand up, Bryan. That's all right, though. I always talk about stuff I've never used. What's this Azure thing I'm talking about? Anyway, so some upcoming events that will probably be of interest to you today. We have Microsoft's running what they're calling Azure Discovery Days. These 3 dates are for the Sydney events. I will put these slides up on our meetup site later if you want to go and grab them. I'll put them up as a PDF, so save you having to take photos of them. These 3 dates are here in Sydney. They are running this event in various cities around Australia, so if you do have colleagues or friends elsewhere in Australia, go over to that website and have a look, and you'll be able to select the city that you want to attend that event for. Useful if you want to go and get some hands-on experience without having to fork out a bunch of cash. And then our annual Global Azure Bootcamp, which is on the 22nd of April. It's being run by Mick Badron, who's a fellow Azure MVP here in Sydney. The details for that are up on the Global Azure Bootcamp website, or you can go to Eventbrite to reserve your tickets. That's a day-long event where you'll get the opportunity to do hands-on labs, as well as hear from various speakers, such as myself and Mick, talk about Azure and how you can use it in your jobs. But interesting to go along to that because there's always some interesting types of experiences to be had and things that you might get to do that you wouldn't normally get to get hands-on with in your day-to-day job. I'm hoping to do something on containers and .NET Core at that event. If you can make it, would be good to see you there. So the way I run these evenings, we'll do a quick what's new. So we'll do public preview, what's generally available, and then just some general announcements. So public preview is services Microsoft's pushed out into the Azure portal or into the public environment that you can go and try. Generally, those services are not yet backed by some form of service level agreement or SLA, so you basically use them at your own risk, but it's very useful for you to be able to get hands-on with these things before they become an SLA-backed, generally available service. Excuse me. So then we'll look at some generally available services next. So since we last got together, Azure Site Recovery, you've now got some additional tooling. If you're a big VMware user on-prem and you're considering moving to Azure, you can now go and use this VMware Deployment Planner to help you understand how you can take your ESX hosts and migrate them into Azure using the Azure Site Recovery capability that actually plugs directly into your ESX infrastructure. Azure Stack Tech Preview 3 shipped. So who's heard of Azure Stack here? Okay, so Azure Stack is Microsoft's for want of a better term, on-prem version of Azure. So it's the re-envisioning of the Windows Azure pack, which is already in the market. This one basically brings the resource manager model of building and maintaining hybrid cloud environments to your data center. So if you stand up Azure Stack in your data center and you use it as the way to deliver cloud services in your data center, you will have compatibility with the resource manager model that's actually in Azure. You'll be able to use things like resource manager templates and all the PowerShell commandlets you use to manage resources in Azure today. You'll be able to use those in your on-prem data center as well. Made this as the first release of this will be running on specific hardware from the likes of Lenovo and HPE. But longer term, I guess the goal is that you'll be able to run it on data center kit that you already own, as long as it meets specific performance criteria. So they're starting with known providers so they can guarantee performance of the solution, because as we all know as technologists, everyone likes to run it on the Mac Mini under their desk and then complain that it doesn't perform as expected. Microsoft wants to make sure that people that are deploying this are going to get the experience they expect out of it. That Tech Preview 3 is up in Azure if you want to go and fire it up and have a play with it. Otherwise, you can download the bits and use it in your own data center if you want. Security Center. Security Center is an interesting one. It's kind of an amalgamation of all the various security attributes that you can look at in Azure. So virtual machines and virtual networks and security groups and open ports, and is expanding out to cover things like web apps and what have you. So you can start to get a single place where you can go to see what your security stance is for workloads that you have deployed into Azure. The free tier on that is quite good as it is on its own. The paid tier for that takes it up a notch. So if you're doing a lot of IaaS, virtual networking type deployments, it will do things like machine learning based analysis of network traffic and virtual machine behaviors to identify where you may be having hosts that are compromised on your network. There is actually a very good blog that's come out in the last week that goes through a customer scenario where Security Center actually helped them identify a breach in their infrastructure that was based around unsecured SA logins on SQL Server, and then being able to perform, what's the word I'm looking for here? The elevation, privilege elevation from SA to effectively host access, and then try and do movement through the network. So that's actually quite a good blog post to go and have a look if you haven't had a look at Security Center before. Recommend that one. Azure File Storage Encryption. So everybody wants everything encrypted when it's in the cloud. Gradually, we're seeing encryption move through all the various service offerings, from virtual machines to web apps to file storage. We already have blob storage with encryption at rest, and obviously in transit we have TLS. Finally, we see the re-envisioning of the SQL database in-browser query editor. So we had that many, many blue moons ago in the old Silverlight portal, where you could manage SQL databases through a Silverlight interface. We finally start to get some of that experience back in the portal, so you no longer need to have SQL Server Management Studio to be able to write queries against your SQL databases. And then Network Watcher. So Microsoft's spending a lot of time in building these tools that help you understand how your environment is working, specifically focused on the infrastructure as a service space. So things like Security Center, Network Watcher, and as I'll talk about in a minute, the Azure Monitor service that gives you kind of that single, I'm loath to use the cliche, but the single pane of glass over everything that's going on inside of the subscriptions that you're offering. So worth going and having a look. The Network Watch is only available in North America at the moment. So if you're running in local Australian regions, you don't have access to that. But if you've got a subscription, you'll be able to go and spin up test workloads in other regions and have a play with that. So worth having a look if you want to go and use those sorts of things. So that's in public preview. You can go and use them now, but there's no SLA backing on those. So if you get downtime on those things, Microsoft's not obliged to compensate you for that. Don't put production workloads on these things is basically what it boils down to. Any questions on that before I talk about generally available? No. Generally available, so the cross-platform command line interface, CLI, Microsoft rewrote this. So it was originally written in Node.js, and they got a lot of feedback from people in the community that the way that the CLI behaved and the fact that it was written in Node.js didn't really meld well with those people that might be doing subscription service administration using traditional command line environments, particularly in the Linux environment, where trying to pipe things into and out of a Node.js interface didn't really make a great deal of sense. So it's been re-envisaged using Ruby. It gives you much more control over how you might pipe data into and out of commandlets, or well, commandlets is the wrong term, but the CLI commands that you've got available to you. So if you've been using the Node.js CLI, it's worth going and upgrading to the Ruby one. Clearly there'll be an impact if you've got scripts that rely on the old interfaces, but it's worth investing the time in that because the Node.js CLI will go away. Azure Advisor, Monitor, and Resource Health are all available. So Advisor is about helping you understand what you're running in Azure and how you can be running it better. The Monitor is about giving you kind of that single pane of glass over what's going on inside of your environment. So I think of it, and someone will probably shoot me, think of it as Splunk in Azure. Probably not quite to the same level that Splunk obviously gives you today, but that's the goal, is it gives you that kind of one place to put everything into so you can kind of look at how your subscription's going. And Resource Health ties into that. So if you can pipe resource health information into the one place, obviously it makes it a lot easier to understand where things are happening in your environment that maybe you need to go and actually have a look at. I could have done with that today. My day's been troubleshooting issues in Azure, which is always fun. Caused by me, not by Microsoft, I might add. Kubernetes support for Azure Container Service. So Microsoft has one of the leading contributors to Kubernetes and kind of one of the chief architects of Kubernetes on their team now, and is driving a lot of work in this space. So if you're doing containers and you're using Kubernetes today, then Azure Container Service now has the ability to support Kubernetes. I won't go into too much detail about what that is, but if you want to know more, come and see me afterwards. Virtual machines. So I am wondering when Microsoft and AWS will run out of letters in the alphabet to use for their virtual machines. But we now have the L series virtual machines, which give you access to low latency disk. So if you've got IO intensive applications, you can now use L series VMs to guarantee that you get the sort of disk IO performance that you want. You have things like the N series, which are GPU based virtual machines that will give you access to GPU style workloads, which can be good both for graphics processing, dare I say it, password cracking, and other applications like machine learning. So if you've ever heard of TensorFlow, the TensorFlow infrastructure that's used, the special processor unit that Google came up with, is just a hybrid version of a GPU with some of the graphics components stripped out of it because they're not really needed for doing ML type actions. So we're seeing these very highly specialized series of virtual machines become available. And I guess it's reducing, some people's pushback on it. Well, I can't do this type of workload in this cloud if I use the virtual machines. Because if you think about it today, with your VMware and your Hyper-V environments, you get a lot of knobs you can twist that allows you to do certain things with CPUs, memory, and disk. You're starting to get that now, but it's at a series level rather than being able to create a new VM and then change every single aspect of it. The good thing is that in many cases you can shift between them, obviously not with no downtime, but you can make the change between running in different configurations if one doesn't suit you. In fact, you can even tear down a VM, keep the disks, and spin up a new VM with those disks maintained. Managed disks, so this is one of the early stages of other work that Microsoft's doing around improving how virtual machines are made highly available. So a bit like EBS volumes in AWS, you no longer need to worry about where your disks are stored. You don't need to choose a storage account into which you put your VHDs. Microsoft goes, that's fine, we'll take care of that for you. And the benefit of that is that you no longer need to worry about, am I replicating that storage account somewhere else? What happens to my virtual machine if that storage account goes away? That's now Microsoft's problem, which is, in my mind, a good outcome. And that's early stage for other work that's coming in the VM space. And then finally, larger VM scale sets. So if you want to scale out to thousands of machines in a VM scale set, you can now do that with VM scale sets. Backup, probably an underloved part of all of our lives, but Microsoft's doing a lot of hard work here to make it more interesting. We've had Azure Backup for virtual machines as an entire entity, which you don't get on any other cloud platform, where you can snapshot a whole VM, whether it's Windows or Linux. Now with this new feature, you can now do a file level recovery in both Windows and Linux virtual machines. So you can go and find specific files on the machine from a particular backup and just restore that one file. You no longer have to restore an entire VM somewhere and then try and figure out which file you want. You can actually go and browse through it. So I'm sure the likes of Commvault are probably not happy about that, but that's the modern world that we live in. And then SQL Data Warehouse is integrating with Azure Data Lake Store. So you'll be able to suck data out of Azure Data Lake Store and then crunch it using Azure SQL DW. Any questions? Yes?
It's not a question, it's a statement.
Yeah.
If you want to know more about Azure Data Lake Store, the Microsoft Data Wranglers user group I run has a session by a guy from Microsoft Tuesday week. So just look up Meetup, Microsoft Data Wranglers.
If you send me the details, then I'll post it on the Meetup group and retweet it, and we'll get. Yeah. No problems. And then general announcements. So these things aren't really specifically about service releases, but just things that are. So if you're using the V1 service bus capability that Microsoft announced alongside of the original Azure Service Bus, the actual on-prem support for that will be ending next year in January. So you've kind of got forewarning for that. It's not the end of the story for this space with the hybrid integration space from Microsoft, but they are retiring that capability. So if you are using that or you know someone who's using that, let them know. Make sure that they take appropriate steps to move away from that and look for what's coming next. Azure SQL Database, as if the P15s, I think, of the world weren't big enough, you now have the Premium RS, which is, I think, the RS stands for real spending, because you'll spend a lot of money to get this virtual machine, or sorry, this is your SQL Database up and running. So this now gives you the ability to run databases up to 4 terabyte in size. Yeah. If you've got a database that size, you probably have other challenges like how do you get 4 terabytes of data into the cloud to start off with, but it's there as an option. Clearly there's enough of a demand to drive that as a feature, so go and knock yourself out on it. If you want to incur the national debt of a small country somewhere in the world running a database, that's fine. Azure Stream Analytics, which is a really cool tool if you're doing a lot of IoT type message processing. There's now some Visual Studio tooling available to you, so you can do some development work with that. That's still a fairly new feature along with sort of the data lake stuff. So there's a lot of missing tooling at the moment, but it is rapidly coming through. And then the next one is geospatial analytics. So I can't see a point in time where I'll be doing geospatial analytics, but I'm guessing if you're doing industry perhaps and you're doing a lot of exploration, geospatial might be something that you want to do to process using Stream Analytics. Site recovery, oh, okay. Well, it was obviously special enough. I got two call outs in this deck, so we'll skip over that one. Everyone loves lower prices. Unfortunately, not for the Premium RS as your SQL database as yet, but if you're using virtual machines and blob storage, prices are changing on those. Just part of the economics of you install enough of this stuff and it gets enough usage, you can bring the price down. And it's also part of the Microsoft approach to being price neutral with changes from AWS. And then advanced backup support. So if you're running SQL Server on virtual machines in Azure, there's some really nice out-of-the-box capability you get when you create your SQL Server setup in Azure around the way it's backed up and patched for you. That's now been extended to cover SQL Server 2016. So if you are running SQL Server on VMs, it's worth going and having a look at that, because I remember my earlier days running things like SharePoint. Backup was always a pain in the backside. This sort of thing is designed to make it a much easier proposition if you're having to stay on virtual machines to back up and patch your SQL Server instances without having to understand necessarily the intricacies of how that works. And if you also can't move to Azure SQL Database for some reason. So I think I'm pretty much done. Yes, I am. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll give everybody a quick couple of minutes break to see if they can fight over what's left of the pizza. Grab themselves a fresh beer or quickly duck to the restrooms, and then we'll have Bryan come up and start his session. So get stuck into whatever's left, guys, and we'll see you in a minute.
All right. Well, thank you all very much, and thank you, Simon, for having me. The strange American accent from here. Just to start off, I'll answer questions about Trump if you have them. I'll do my best. I do not speak for everyone. I don't know. I don't even know what to say. Yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm glad I don't have to travel there, like, not as a citizen. So, and I wanted to thank Tankstream. This is pretty awesome. I really appreciate having the beer. I'm much better presenting when I have a beer, but I'm even a better presenter if you have a beer. So there you go. So I told you, you're going to hear it twice. As Simon said, I really like talking about Azure. I've done web development for a long time, almost 2 decades. I'm much older than you probably think I am. I'm a grandfather, if that even gives you any indication. And I love talking about Azure. And it was, let's see, I came here in August, so it was probably somewhere around April or March of last year. I reached out to, I believe it was Simon, to say, hey, can I come talk? And he's like, sure, you can come talk. And I came down, and that day it rained more than I think it had in the history of Australia. And we had like 65 people registered. I'm like, hell yeah, 65 people. There were 8 people. Is anybody here from then? What? Oh, so one guy. So you were, I'm not lying. Okay, so then I reached out again because I knew I'd be coming. I'm the reason it's on a Monday night, because I told Simon, my company has an office here and we're doing a couple of events in here and in Melbourne. And I was like, I'd love to come speak, but it has to be Monday at this time, because I'm all day tomorrow, I'm in an event, and then I go to Melbourne on Wednesday and I fly back home on Saturday. So it's like, it has to be then. He's like, yeah, sure, we'll do it. And I'm like, sweet. And he shows, and I see the meetup, there's like 111 people. I'm like, hell yeah. And then it rains. I'm like, damn. So, but I'm glad you all made it. Thank you for braving this weather. Just to give you a little bit of background, I'm gonna show you, just so you know where I'm from. So my name is Bryan Soltis, and I'm a technical evangelist at Kentico, which is a .NET-based CMS, and we also have a headless CMS. I'm not gonna talk much about that, but I wanted you at least to hear the name. So if any of you encounter Kentico, technical evangelist. So you can reach out to me and I will gladly give you help. I'm not selling you anything because I'm a technical evangelist, not a salesperson, but if you need help, I'm definitely your person to ask. So where am I from? I'm from there. That's where I live. And just to show you that we're not stingy with the weather, this is what's coming to my house tomorrow, which always happens. So I live about, let's see, I live, where's my mouse? I live about right there. This always happens when I travel, normally when I travel out of the country, and my wife calls me and she's like, there's tornadoes, I'm wrangling up the cat into the bedroom. Why did you leave the country? But so that's why. So anyway, I digress. I've worked with Azure a very long time before it was ever even released. I worked with Azure. The boot camps that Simon mentioned, they weren't called global boot camps back then, but I've actually given 5 of those on Microsoft's behalf. I don't know what the global boot camps look like, but when I did the boot camps, it was it was about 8 hours. We had 4 main topics, and it was full immersion for the developers in the room, and we gave them all. What I did was cloud services, what was called SQL Azure at that point in time. SQL Azure became Azure SQL, which became SQL Database. Azure SQL Database, and now I think it's just SQL Database. It's all the same thing. And the service bus and queuing and messaging. So it was a really good when I did it, and it was a lot of really good information. So if that's an event that you can make it to, I highly recommend it. But I really like talking about Azure. Last time I was here, I talked about Azure Search. This time I want to talk about Azure Functions. And I'm going to show you what Azure Functions can do, so that maybe you could build your possibly evil empire. That's really up to you if you want to do it. So really, you need some henchmen. You need someone to do some dirty work. They're gonna need to be able to follow orders. So you need to be able to script them very, very definitively. I want you to do this. Don't do this. Don't do these things. I need you to do this. A good henchman would be ready 24/7. Go. When I say go, you must have a pretty easy trigger finger on a henchman. They got to be able to do things very quickly and without question. But you also should be able to tell a henchman exactly what they do, and they need to learn and understand exactly what you want to do. And maybe they work in a group. Maybe it's a lone wolf henchman. I don't know, depending on really what you want to do. But you have to be a good fit for the organization. So this is really where Azure Functions can come into play. And I'm going to warn you right now, because the next slide is going to have it. I have a number of little things in my slides. I do my best, because last time I was here, what's your name? Sam. Okay, Sam. And last time I had the Simpsons quotes, because I've determined I've traveled all around the world. Everyone loves Simpsons quotes. That's a universal fact. I don't have any Simpsons quotes, but I have a couple things. And if you can guess what the things are that I have, then I have a giveaway for you. And the first one is, before I even get into this slide, can anyone tell me what that is? From? What? No, not Addams Family. It is Igor. It's from a movie. Young Frankenstein. Who is that? All right, you have your choice. Would you like an Xbox certificate or a JB, whatever that is? JB. All right, the other one is an Xbox. So there you go. You get a $25 gift card. There you go. So Azure Functions has been around a long time. Actually, it was announced at Build 2016. It is a serverless architecture. So the idea is you completely take a functionality, whether it's a method or a function or whatever it is you want to call it, and you abstract that. There's no server behind it, server application behind it. And you just put that one single functionality in its own isolated environment, and you call it however you want to call it, and it does whatever evil deeds you want it to do. You can program it in several different languages. So a good Azure function will be able to speak several languages, and I'll get into what those are. You should be able to trigger these functions in several different ways. So whether that's on demand or there's some automated, a schedule, whatever it is, these functions should be able to be doing your dirty work, however you want them to do. You should only pay a henchman when you really want to use them. You don't need to be paying a henchman to sit around and, watch. I was totally going to interject in some like US show. I'll pick Netflix, watching Stranger Things. Because you guys like Stranger Things big here, right? You guys all saw Stranger Things? Okay, just making sure.
That's right, we're into Netflix and chill as well.
That's right. Well, it's really funny. So it's good to know. Are we doing that tonight? I need more beer. So the company, Kentico, is actually based out of the Czech Republic. And so when I used to travel, I travel there a couple times a year. When I go there, it's better now, but when I used to go there, I would pull up Netflix and be like, Netflix is not available in your country. I'm like, great. 4 channels of news, that's what I get to watch. So anyway, and a good Azure function resume would actually be able to log what they do so you know what your henchmen are doing all the time. So the language that they can speak, Azure Functions support a lot of different languages: C#, F#, Batch, Bash, Python, Python, PowerShell, PHP, and JavaScript. You're going to see C# because I'm a .NET developer who started with ASP, so that's what I'm good at. I can do JavaScript. It takes me a little while. Not so good. I can do PowerShell too. So actually, that was a funny question. How many people took the 7533 exam? One of the Azure certification exams. Yeah. I think it was 7533. All of the cloud service and web service website questions. Yeah, I wrote all this. So I wrote those questions for that. And try to write a question on how do you do this in Azure Web Apps? Well, it's an interface, and you drag and drop and do stuff. So you can't write a question on that. It's too easy. So what do you write? A PowerShell question, because that's all you can do. And they're like, well, you have to make it hard. Well, of course, everyone scripts everything in Azure by PowerShell every day. Of course, that's what everyone does. So that's why that question, I think they've retired that exam now. And I actually heard from testing that it was too hard. But I'm like, what the hell do you want me to do? It's the interface. You made it too easy. That's all I can do is the PowerShell. But anyway, I digress. The Azure Functions, they support a lot of different languages, which is really cool. The one that I'm going to show you, the examples that I have, they're written in C#, which they're very similar to like a .NET Core application. I've played around with the JavaScript one a little bit. I haven't really delved into a lot of the other ones just because I'm not an F# developer and I'm not a Python developer or PHP. The trigger types you can do. You have timers, so you can have automated, you know, on a certain increment of time that you want. I think you can go as quick as 5 minutes, possibly 1 minute. I think it's 5 minutes is the earliest you can make a trigger, but I think you can go all the way up to like a year if you wanted a function to travel there. They have things like blob triggers, so you can tell Azure Functions to watch a specific blob container. Container experiences some kind of change, you then trigger off your function. That's one of the demos I'm going to show you. You can have HTTP triggers that you can just call with some HTTP request directly into it. You can have generic webhooks or Git webhooks so that you can reach in when something happens, and you can execute your trigger. Then it can be watching some queue, so that if you have a queue inside of Azure and it gets some message into it, it triggers off your trigger, or triggers off your function service bus. Or if you just want to write a manual trigger and run that, you can do that as well. The day-to-day duties, you can have like a guided creation of an Azure function where it kind of walks you through, hey, what is it you want to do? And it kind of walks you through the quick start, or you can just create it manually. As of right now, it's based off of the project.json, which is, it's just kind of an interesting thing, because if you're familiar with .NET Core and the whole project.json, everyone's like, oh, cool, project.json, and now they're back to the CS proj kind of thing. So you don't have project.jsons in .NET Core anymore. So I don't, as far as I know, triggers are still project.json based, but I don't know if that's going to change. They changed .NET Core back, but I don't know. But for right now, you have a project.json, so if you want to pull in dependencies, you can just put them in to your project.json, and then dynamically compiles them, pulls all that stuff in. So that's how you pull in dependencies from any NuGet package. You can also upload your own DLLs, your own components, your own classes into your Azure function, and then you can reference them inside your function if you want to as well. Logging is really important, because if you want to debug, there's no real way to step through. As far as I know, there's no way to attach a debugger to an Azure function. So you do a lot of what I liken to like JavaScript programming of console.log. So you can, oh, what's this? Okay, I got to here, you do log.info, and that's how you can kind of step through your function as well. Really? With Azure Function template, project template. Really? Okay. I did not know that. It's good to know. Okay.
Application Insights is also coming.
To Azure Functions?
Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's cool.
The beta channel for Azure Functions support Application Insights. That's all transparent. You don't wire anything up. You basically provide a key to the App Insights account that you want to attach your function logging to, and then exceptions and what have you automatically. They're all going to get routed to Azure. So if you go to the functions GitHub environment, you'll find details up there about it. So it's public, but it's in beta, so you can't use it in production yet. Gotcha. There will be announcements about it over the next few weeks, but it's out there if you want to go and have a look at it. No, that's good information. It's really good, actually. Very cool. Well, I didn't even know you could debug them, so that's really cool. That must be a fairly new thing. But I did a lot of log.info, so I could debug my stuff. But it's still very useful. Yes. And actually, I use log.info in even my without debugging, just so I can get some responses, and I'll show you that in the demos that I have. But then I also mentioned you can bring in third-party assemblies if you want to, whether that's through a NuGet package to the project.json, or if you want to upload your DLL and reference it or do something. You can do that. What's really cool is Azure Functions run on top of an app service. It's really an app service with just your function on it. So because it's an app service, it has all of the app service application settings available to it. So you can put all your sensitive information inside of your app settings configuration, so it's not in your actual function code, and that way you can just pull them in. So I'll show you that in my example as well. So I don't have a giveaway for this, but anybody know what that is? That's from the Incredibles. It's the Incredibles. There you go. Simon for the win. Okay. All right. So let me close down some stuff. You don't need to see where I live anymore. Just to let you know, I have to fly from here to there, all the way there. So it's awesome. I love traveling 15 hours, and that's what's coming in like 2 days. All right. So I have a number of Azure subscriptions. So one of the demos I'm going to show you is one subscription. I'm going to switch over to the other subscription and show you that. So when I first wanted to look into Azure Functions, I wanted to just kind of
Well, because I'm a technical evangelist, that means I don't really work on anything real. I just get to think of things, and that's what I work on. And then I write a blog about it. And even if it doesn't work, I write a blog, and I'm like, don't do this. And either way, I get paid, so it's pretty good. But I came up with a scenario, and that's the first demo I want to show you. But the second demo is a real one. That it's a real project because it's my site, but it is still a real project. But I came up with a scenario for Azure Functions, and I used to do development. So I mean, I did it for a long time. I was a consultant for several years. And in this particular scenario, I worked on one of the world's largest modeling agencies. So that's the site I worked on. And has anyone worked with a modeling agency? Okay. It's, I don't know how to say it. I can't even say it nicely. They're insane. You would say, this is a real conversation. I made a website, gallery of images. And the first photo library, when I went to photos, were pictures of my truck. So of course, a developer, I'm like, I don't care, I just need photos in there. So I put pictures of my truck in there. I showed it to them. You see the gallery? You see how they're all listed? These are pictures of cars and flowers. We need models. Okay? So I went to their site and I pulled down images from their Australia office, actually, because I was dealing with New York. I pulled the Australia models and I put them in the site. Here you go. See? These are Australia models. We need to see New York. So, but at the same time, they also thought it was an application is totally cool to upload, I don't know, 100 megabyte images and show 400 of them in a gallery. We should be able to do that. I'm like, yeah, you can't show 100 megabyte photo, let alone 400 of them on a page. So this was a couple years ago. So in my scenario, the idea is I have a website in which someone's uploading photos to me, and I want to compress these photos and save them later because in my site I'm going to reformat them or something, but I want to archive the original one. So for that kind of scenario, to compress a very large image could be very resource intensive. And really, I'm just trying to save a copy of this image so I have it to CYA, you know, just so I don't come into trouble later, because I'm going to end up manipulating the image they upload me to make it, I don't know, 60 kilobytes so it loads on a page instead of 100. But scenario I came up with in my demo. So so that's the little lead up into what I'm about to show you. So inside of Azure Functions, you come into here and you can do, like I said, you can make a new function, and it's kind of a guided thing, and it kind of walks you through what you're doing. So how many people, I was faced this way. How many people have used Azure Functions? Okay. Hopefully you learned something tonight. I don't know. If not, the free pizza and beer, so it's all good. So this is the get started where it kind of walks you through, and it's focused. Like, are you trying to do something on a timer? Do you want something to happen with a webhook? Is it data processing? Are you doing JavaScript or whatever? I've actually made almost all of my functions creating it from scratch. And in here, you can see all the different functions, like templates that are there for you. Now, regardless of what the template is, it's just a template, and you can it just gives you, it's kind of like a boilerplate, and then you can turn around and completely manipulate it if you want to. But inside of here, you can see all the different languages that it supports, you know, Bash, Batch, what have you. And then they have different types of functions and their own classifications of the scenario. Is it a timer? Is it experimental, or whatever it is? Like, these are all of the functions, and I don't know why this doesn't scroll all the way down. So they're constantly adding new types of functions inside of here. And it really doesn't matter what you pick. You can pick any one. Like, I'm going to pick one I've never picked before because that's always fun to do in a demo. Let's pick a service bus queue because I haven't done that one. And it will ask you some information of what's your service bus connector. So what am I connecting to within Azure? What is the query name that you're going to use? These are often parameters that are passed to your functions and the name of that parameter that you want to use as part of your function. So I picked this one, and I don't have a connector to send to, so I'm going to pick a different one, which is going to be a manual trigger because that's much less to deal with. So once I do this, it creates a function behind the scenes, and that's the code of my function. That's it. So because I picked C#, and I warned you ahead of time that that's what you're going to see a lot of, these are the files that consist of my function. I have a Yes, I'll just zoom in. How about that? Let me collapse a few things down. Sorry. Let's go to, how big? Let's go 1024, 768. I thought about going to 800 by 600 just to take us back to 1994, but well, let's see, that didn't, I'll do it, but I'd rather have it wider so that you can see more of the screen. I'm already committed to this now, but thank you. At this point, I'm just going to write it out and see how it works out. Okay, so now I'm back into here. Is that better? There we go. Hey. All right, sorry about that. So your base function, if you use the C#, is you're going to get this run.csx, which is, someone explained to me, is it Xcode? They told me what CSX means. It's basically a CS file, but it's a specific format that deals with the syntaxing. I think it's called Xcode. Mentioned it, but I can't remember the name. I'll have to figure what that is. But it's like a particular type of file, like an Xcode file. That's what the CSX is, but I can't remember the exact name of it. But it's essentially a CS file. And inside of here, you can start creating your own files if you need to. So by default, you don't have a project.json. But if you make a project.json, you could then, if you spelled it right, you could do some stuff. So now I'm going to have to delete the project.json. Yeah, okay, let's delete that again. Let's go back up. So I made a folder. I don't even know how I did that. So, okay. So let's see, project.json. And then once you have your project.json, then you can, do the whole dependencies. And if I was typing inside of there, I'm not even going to bother. Obviously, you see my typing skills, so I'm not even going to bother doing that. Instead, I'm going to jump to one that's already done. So that way, I'm not going to jack it up. So this is the demo I'm going to show you. But first, I'm going to show you the project.json. So inside of here, you can start bringing in, your different frameworks if you need to. And if you start typing them, you'll actually get a compilation on the fly with them. And I did not think of to make one of these ahead of time so that I could bring in a project.json. Is that the one I just made? Yeah. All right. So I think that's the same one I have here. So it's not going to do any good if I pick that project.json. It's not. All right, let me do this. So let's do NuGet, and we'll do, let's see, how about Twilio? Do you guys use Twilio down here very much? You know what Twilio is? So Twilio is it's like a messaging, like SMS, but they do more. Like Twilio wants to be Skype now. I think they want to do even more, but like VoIP kind of stuff. But I'm just gonna pick Twilio. Hopefully it actually compiles and it comes into here. So if I do this, let me expand this up too. So this is the log where you'll see things are happening on the fly. But I'm gonna just do this Twilio, and I'm most certainly gonna type this wrong, and everything's gonna crash because it's a demo on the fly. So as soon as I save this, you should see a message of where the NuGet package will actually try to start restoring. There we go. So it's starting NuGet restore. It's finding that. It's pointing the NuGet package. Now I have Twilio inside of my site. So now inside of my application, I can do that. So again, project.json, you can just bring any NuGet package you want. I don't know if they're going to ever switch that to the CS proj kind of thing, which I learned the last time I did this presentation. Everybody's like, they're switching that in .NET Core, but I don't know if it's going to happen in here. So I'm going to just save that back. So I don't need Twilio, but either way. So that's how you can use that. So now let's get into the actual code itself. If you need to make folders and files, you can, all inside of here. Again, if you want to upload your own DLLs and reference them inside of there, your own classes, you can do all that. So let's jump back over here. And let me pull this up. I meant to have this open too. I'm sorry. It's under my Cloud Explorer. You can view your Azure Functions inside of Visual Studio if it's awake, but it's not going to do anything. So while that is waking up, I'll come back over here. So this is where you can actually start coding your stuff out. And because I chose a timer function, oh, good. That's good to see. Always helpful. Of course, I updated Visual Studio 2017 before today because why not? Because I'm giving a demo, I might as well, do it on the fly. So let me clap some of that down. And I'm going to pull it up inside of there because it's a little bit, if I can pull it up. This is all local. All right, I'm not doing that because I'm not signed in anyway. Because this particular one is based off of a blob. So it's a trigger off of a blob. And when I set it up, there's a number of properties that it's going to look for. One is the name of the blob parameter I'm going to pass in. It doesn't matter what it is as long as my code references it. The next is the path to the actual storage. Well, this is the storage account connection string. So that's going to say what storage account am I supposed to be watching and what path inside of that storage account should this function be watching to know when to trigger. This particular function is a blob trigger function. What that means is it's going to look at this storage account and look at blobs with this specific path underneath the CMS storage dancing goat media uploads path. And whenever that changes, it's going to trigger off this function and it's going to execute. So what's it going to do? It's going to, let's see if I can collapse that. I really wanted to open that inside of here. Let me just see. Yes, thank you. Come on. Yeah, and of course I'm hitting everything in like the US, of course, and that's where all my stuff is. It's all in Eastern US. All right, I need both of these, but whatever, I'll just do both. All right, so now let me wait for this to load. Okay, oh good, it loaded my personal one, but not the one I need. All right, so under here, it is under app services, because again, the functions are really just an app service. So it's basically an app service with just your function on top of it. So if you drill down all the way into here, you can get to your actual run.csx file and you get some syntax highlighting. It's not the greatest experience because it's got to like write up to Azure every time you make a change. So it's got to go back and forth every time. But it is a little bit easier than just working inside of here because this gets really annoying, especially when you're trying to do a demo of it on the fly. So let me expand the trigger, and I'm just going to drill down. So now here's my run.csx. So now it's fetching that file, and then it's going to pull it up. So let me collapse auto hide. I said auto hide, and let's auto hide that. Auto hide. Okay, so now you can see this is the file. So by default, this is what the blob trigger looks like, and then I started doing my code inside of here. But this is what you get. So you get a reference to whatever you named your parameter, and then you have the log that you can write to. So in my particular case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the way Kentico, I have it running in Azure, and we can store media libraries in Azure storage. Here I'm going to watch. So as I upload things inside of the Kentico interface, it's going to write it to Azure storage, and then it's going to trigger off this function. But the way Kentico works is it makes another folder called a thumbnail because we make a thumbnail on the fly, and I don't want to deal with the thumbnail files. So that's what this code is doing. But then if it does find one, it's going to create the zip. So inside of here, I'm going to do a couple basic things. The first thing is I'm going to get a connection to my storage account. And if you notice, I'm using configuration manager.app settings to do that. This is where you can use apps because the Azure Functions are an app service behind the scenes. It has everything available to it that app services do, like app settings. So you can put sensitive information like connection strings or whatever it is you feel like doing. You can put them all inside of there, and you can use the system.configuration to pull them into your Azure Functions. So this is my container storage string that I'm pulling in that points to that storage account, and then there's a couple other ones that I'm using. So inside of my function, I can just do this. So now my function doesn't contain this. Azure Functions are also designed so you can check this in the source control. So now you're not storing sensitive information inside of your repository, all that kind of stuff. So this isn't really that exciting of code. I'm just connecting to Azure Storage. I'm trying to figure out, do I have the container of where I want to store the archive, which this configuration right here, it says like storage container, it's archive is the name of it. I just threw it in an app setting in case everyone would change it. That's all this code is doing. It's going to create the container if it's not there called archive. But spoiler alert, there is an archive one right there. So, but it's empty. So there's nothing in there. It's very sad. But we're going to put something in there in a second. So, well, okay, this is the CMS file. I used to filter them by only the images, but I took that away. So it basically picked up the folder and it zipped that because it knew that there was something different. But the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start logging the info. So this is where, even if you're not debugging, I still am writing messages so I can see what's happening. And it's a good way to just understand what it is your function's doing. And in this case, I'm just going to pull the blob. So the blob is the new file that it's watching the storage account. And when a new file comes into there, it's going to pull it down. And now I have it available to me. So I'm going to get the properties, convert it to bytes, do a bunch of stuff, get the reference to it. And then I'm going to create a new blob called GZ. And ultimately, I'm going to come to this compress function that is going to compress the file, memory stream, gzip. Doesn't really matter what you do here. This is just what I'm doing in my thing. And then I'm going to save it. I'm going to upload that blob. So the idea is, if you had like a 100 megabyte file, someone copies up to your site, you want to compress that and move it over. But to compress that could be a significant performance hit. It might take it a little while. Azure Functions, I'm offloading all of that functionality onto Azure Functions. So when it happens behind the scenes, when someone uploads a file, the compression, and ultimately I'm going to copy it over to this archive container so I can keep a copy of it. But I don't want to keep the original because it's an enormous file because they're a modeling agency and they're ridiculous. So I'm going to compress it into as small as I can. And then all this happens, has no impact on my application. It's an asynchronous process. Nothing's waiting for this to complete. It just runs behind the scenes. Henchman. There you go. So, and I'm doing some logging throughout the process where I'm uploading it. Okay, it's completed, zipping failed, operation completed, whatever it is. You log whatever you want to log, knock yourself out. Here's my archive container. It has that file in it, although that's a folder file from the original. Just to show you, this is the folder that it's going to be watching. It's buried down a little bit into my Azure storage account, but it's this uploads folder right here. And there's like a default CMS folder file. That's what it's doing, which is a folder that our system makes on the fly. But anyway, that's what's happening. So inside of my very awesome demo application, I have the ability to upload an image. So let's look at the image I have. So the last time I was in Australia, this is my 4th time here. I've gotten to experience a lot of stuff. This is my 3rd time to Sydney, and it'll be my 3rd time to Melbourne. But I've been here 4 times. 1 time I was in Sydney, 1 in Melbourne. The last time I was in Melbourne, a really good friend of mine took me to an Aussie football game. I saw Essendon play Western Bulldogs. I had never been there. This is a picture from that game. Huge field. The most amazing part of this game, as I'm watching it, I'm like, holy cow, this is awesome. And it wasn't very crowded. But this is in MSG or something, the big stadium that's right in the middle of Melbourne. The most amazing part of Aussie football is the fact that they're allowed to send people on the field to give messages. Like while play's going, there's just a guy out there going, hey, watch this guy. And then they run back. And I was like, are you kidding me? That's amazing. So anyway, this is my very big image. And it's a massive image of 2.9 megabytes. So this is my very big image. I'm not going to get much compression out of it. Spoiler alert. But I will get a little bit. So in my site, it's configured so that when I upload this image, the lights go off. And then, so that was awesome. As soon as I upload this, that image is going to get copied into the CMS storage folder because Kentico is configured to store it here. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to see that, I'll try to refresh it if I can catch it in time. You're going to see that image show up here. Then the Azure function is going to kick off, and you're going to see it pop up over here. Actually, let's do this. Let's see if I can I open up 2 of these? Now let me open up 2, are you? Bastard. Nope. No, I can't open up 2 of those windows. Sorry, Microsoft Storage Explorer won't have it. All right. So, and then also inside of my function, let me collapse that back down. I'm going to go to the logs so that you can see the logs happen. So I'm going to collapse all this down, or I'm going to try to expand it, and I'm going to clear this out. So now we're sitting at a blank log. So as this happens, you'll see all those messages of it got the file, it zipped the file, copied the file up. Hooray, everything's great. So as soon as I pick my awesomely large image of the Essendon, it's like a plane, but I can't remember what they're called. Bombers, yes. They got their selves handed to them on that game, unfortunately. They got beat like 6-0. It was pretty sad. But I'm an Essendon fan because that's the only reason I have to cheer for an Aussie team is I was there. So, all right. So I'm going to keep going to the wrong folder. All right. So when I click this, I will do my best to update everything as best as I can. So I'm uploading the image. So while that's uploading, it's going to do that. So if I refresh here, I have no idea what that even is all about. All right. So now you'll see the image. There it is, 2.9 megabytes. Did everybody see that? I probably went too fast there. So anyway, there's the image there, 2.9 megabytes that I uploaded. This is the way Kentico is configured to store things in Azure Storage. But my function is watching this folder. So if I jump over to my function, I should see some messages. And here it is. It says the function kicked off, it completed, and then it's actually, that was for the other file, I think. But anyway, this is where it's starting the zip. It found that folder. This is the actual file name. It created a new blob, uploaded, zipping. The reason I'm seeing this is I did the log.info. So it's a good way to do that. So now if I go over to that specific container, which is the archive container, I'll see a massively zipped 2.2 megabyte file, and it's been zipped. So the idea behind that is you potentially could use Azure Functions to do that kind of compression and archiving of information. This is just one example. And 2+ years of working in a modeling agency made me very biased against any images on websites. So that was the first example I wanted to show you. That's a demo. It's not exciting. The next one I'm going to show you is totally exciting. I just have to switch over. So I have my own website, and it's running under, it's using what we have, what's called a headless CMS. So basically all of our content stored in the cloud. And that's what's running my website here. And I really use this as a way to learn my own company's product, but also a way to demo it. But I have a lot of content, but our system, it doesn't have like a search capability. So in my scenario, I really wanted to use Azure Search, of all things, to search my own content. But I need to get my data from our system into Azure Search. And I want it to be on an automated process, so I don't have to worry about doing it all the time. So as I update, my data doesn't update very often. It only updates like once a day. And so it's not that important that I do it every second. So I thought what would be really good is set up one on a timer. So while the previous example was a blob trigger, so when that blob account, when that storage account changes, it triggers it and it just happens. In this case, I want it to happen once a day, and I want to basically update my search index. So I have a different function for that. I'm going to see if I can open up over here, just so that will be a little bit easier. Of course, now I can't find the window. Cloud Explorer. So this one is in the other account. It's awesome having multiple Azure subscriptions. Then you get to try to remember where everything is. This is the one I care about because this is the one I pay for. So, all right. Let me open that up. The only thing, it's C#, shockingly enough, because that's what I know how to do well. But it has my project.json is a little bit, it's got a little bit more to it because I have more things that I'm doing. So the Kentico.deliver, that's our API, because I need to have Azure Functions reach into our repository to get the data. I'm going to send it. I'm going to do some manipulation of the actual name of the file so that I can filter out like ticks and special characters, because some of these things have that in the name. So I bring in the regular expression, and I'm also going to do some link. Now there is a number of kind of like core libraries that are available to Azure, every Azure function. At least the C# ones, like, you know, there's like system.text, system. I don't know. There's a list on the website. I think there's a link in my stuff too. But there's like maybe 15 or 20 system namespaces that are available to you. But if you need any special thing, you have to bring them in explicitly. So that's what I'm doing inside of my project.json. So I just wanted you to at least see that I'm doing something different. Now, my code is a little bit more complex because I'm doing a little bit more. So this one runs on a timer. So let me show you let's show you inside of Azure Functions first. So this is what it looks like. Let me jump over here. It has different parameters that get sent to it. Again, the type of function you choose, it's going to dictate the type of parameters that you're sending into it. This one, it wants to know the name of my timer, which is the object I pass in, and the schedule that I want it to run. I think that's like days, hours, no, because that's a day, it's 1 day, so that's month, year, and then the other way it's like minutes, seconds, milliseconds or something. I'm not sure how quickly you can run it. I'm running mine once a day, but it says consult the documentation to learn more. So you can specify the schedule that you want to run at. I am using some app settings for my function as well, because I'm connecting to our system. So I have like an API key for Kentico Cloud, which is our headless CMS. And then I have my Azure search settings. So I have the name of my index, the name of my search index, the API key for Azure search, the API key for our system, the blog URL, because I'm going to pull my blogs. So I'm using a lot of things in Azure application settings, so that way I don't have to hardcode them inside of my actual function. So I'm doing them inside of app settings to do that. So this is what that function looks like. It's a little bit more complex because it's doing a lot of things. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to connect to Azure Search, and the API key or the service name, and then the API key here off of my application settings. And then I'm going to figure out, should I be deleting and creating the index? I coded this particular function so that if I want to drop and delete the index, I can based off an app setting. Although it's a lot faster just to do something like this so that it does it. So I'm going to go ahead and do that so it will recreate it. I'm going to go ahead and run it so that way I'm starting from scratch. Let me just do that real quick. So I basically told it drop and recreate the index anyway, because why not? All right. So let's do that. Then it's going to say the index already exists. All right, and it just loaded it too, which is not exactly what I wanted to do, but that's okay. All right. So inside of my function, I'm telling it, what service, Azure Search, Smart Search am I connecting to? Smart Search, Azure Search Service am I connecting to? So this is Azure Search SDK code. Because I have that in the project.json, I'm pulling the NuGet package, so I get that available to me. And then I'm saying whether or not I need to delete the index and create the index, and then load the index. So I have some helper classes down here that are doing these specific things. The first one is a very exciting call of deleting the index, which it's actually at the bottom, which says go delete the index. So index client, and then there's like a .delete at the end of this, or no, where's that? It says get the client. Oh, I'm never actually deleting the client. That's probably why I'm getting an error, because I never actually delete the client. I'm getting the client. That's funny. There should be a call here that says something like index client.delete. Is it? Oh, what am I doing? I was getting IntelliSense for a second. All right, I'm not even gonna bother. I'm totally gonna like mess that up if I don't do it right. So let's just leave that. Anyway, this is where the call would be to delete it if I actually had it coded. The next one is some Azure Search stuff to create the index. I won't dig into this a lot, but if you were here last time, you would have seen this awesome code. I'm just defining my index, defining what the fields of my index are. Am I going to search against them? Am I not going to for the type, location, whatever? This is all completely configurable. If you're not familiar with Azure Search, it's pretty powerful. Search as a service kind of thing, and you can define your own index and tell it how you want to work with your data, blah, blah, blah. The main part is the loading of the index. So this is where I'm going to use a couple different SDKs or a couple different packages to do this. The very first thing is I get a connection to our system. That's this deliver client by pressing my project ID. This is our API code. I'm saying go get the speaking engagements. And then I'm going to get the response of that. And then I'm going to start injecting these into my search index. And I do that by creating a document, a search document, which is an Azure Search object class. And for each one of those, I'm making a new document, and then I'm going to insert all these documents into my Azure index. So basically what I'm telling it is, go get everything from our system, make a document for it, and put it in my Azure Search index. Right now, I'm only saying go get the speaking engagements, but I also have beer in there too, because I review beer on my site, because it's my site. I get to do what I want. And then I'd say go get my RSS feed from a different URL entirely. So I have some code in there to do some link to go parse out the XML. And I created a document for each one of those. All I'm telling it is go get this data, inject it into my Azure Search. So when I run this, I can say it's going to look like this. And I'm doing some response writing so I can see the actual data I'm injecting in. So this is where my, well, it had a problem because my function was already created because I didn't actually delete it. I said I deleted, but I didn't put the code in to delete it. So that's what that's doing. But then this is where I'm pulling each item. So this is a speaking engagement. It's just the data I have that I'm pulling. I'm injecting into my search. It's not really that important. I'm just showing you so you can see how I'm pulling that data. So this is where I'm doing the log.info, saying for each speaking engagement, get the ID, get the name, get the page, whatever, just so I can have logging. I can see what's being inserted into my Azure Search Index in case I wanted to see it. So how all that kind of fits together is if I go into our system and I add new data, and if I come into here, and I'm going to do Bryan Soltis, okay. And I'm going to add, in my site, I have speaking engagements. So all the speaking engagements that I do. Oh, awesome. I have an error on my own site. Okay, so I have an error on my own site, but that's okay. I don't care. I'll come back to that in a minute. But I have different speaking engagements right here. You can see this is when I spoke on Azure Search not long ago. I spoke with Kentico. I spoke in February. I spoke at 2. I'm going to add in tonight's session, and I would like it to show up in this particular environment, so I can come into our system and I can add in the speaking engagement I'm doing actively right now. So what is it? This is the 3rd? Yeah. And this is, what am I doing? I'll just make Azure Functions, just because I'm not going to type out too much. And this is just our interface for entering this, so I'm just going to do Azure Functions. And I'm in Sydney, and I have a real bad habit of spelling it S-Y-D-E-N-Y. I've learned that in my life. And it doesn't really matter. I'm just going to publish this item. And so if I save that, and I go to my website, and I search for, let's say, functions, and I'm glad I didn't type that incorrectly and have a very inappropriate thing show up, we don't see it. And we don't see it because this code is hitting Azure Search. So it's hitting my index, but it's not finding it, because my function is set up to run once a day. We could all sit around here. There's plenty of beer. I guess we could sit here until tomorrow. Although it would be tomorrow my time, so that's going to be in like 20 hours. So instead, I'm going to execute that function right now. And so if I run it, it's going to go through. And now there's a lot of stuff in here. I'm going to see if I can find that specific one. I probably should have cleared it first. But there it is. So it's the first one. So it picked it up from our system using our SDK and then wrote it into Azure Search. So now if I do this, Azure Functions. So the idea behind this is now I can just enter data into my website as I want to. And once a day, it's going to hit our repository, pull that data, and throw it into my Azure Search Index. So my search is usually up to date, unless every once a day, depending on when you want to go look and search my site. Doesn't change all that often. I could make it run every 5 minutes, and then it would keep that up to date. Kentico Cloud, which is my backend repository, it has an API, and I can filter that API, but it's really not designed to search against the data. But I needed a solution to search my data. I wanted to use Azure Search for it. Azure Functions is the perfect thing to put that on the back end. I'm only going to pay for the functionality that Azure Search uses when it runs to do that processing. Then it's going to shut itself down and get charged. I don't have to do anything, just runs on the fly. I could put in error handling to send me an email if I didn't have the delete code in, which apparently I don't, or something like that. But this is a great example of what you can do with Azure Search to offload this. I don't have to build the schedule, build the integration. I just have to put in those 2 bits of code and pull it all in, and it just runs on the back end. Perfect henchman kind of stuff. Anybody have any questions?
Does Kentico have webhooks that kind of triggers?
We don't have it for this system yet, but it's coming. Yeah, that would help, and I'll end up updating this when we have that. We are working on them, but we don't have them yet for our system. But once we do have them, I can get the Azure webhook to do a generic webhook to reach in and pull the data as it changes inside of our system. It will just happen. That's the next logical step, but we have to build that out on our side first. So it's a good question, though. So what can you do? Henchman task. You can image manipulation, like I showed you. You can log. You can keep logs. You can do a denial of service attack, because this is a possible evil empire you're building. You can number crunch. You can do integration processing, kind of similar to what I showed you. You can create a spam bot because you're an evil person. You want to do that. Do you guys use site uptime? Is that big in Australia? Okay. You could do something like that. You could have your function hit your website and see if it gets a response. Order processing, you could decrypt Bitcoin if you want to bring down an entire currency. Notification delivery, archiving files, or if you want to catfish an X, you know, whatever you want to do, however evil you want to make Azure Functions, it's all there to do it. So it's pretty unlimited of what you want to have Azure Functions do for you. And it has a lot of possibilities. This is your chance to win the Xbox gift card if someone can tell me what that picture is. Bam. I did this in the US and they didn't know it that fast. All right, so this is your card and there's some kind of serial number on the receipt that you have to put in when you do it. First time buying it, there you go, congratulations. If you want to learn more, here's some good stuff. This is the Azure Functions main page. There was a big announcement about introducing Azure Functions when it first came out. Scott Hanselman had a really good article that I want to put in here, just kind of explaining the serverless architecture. I'm going to share this entire slide deck with Simon as well. So if you want to get the link from there, you can. And then this is a blog I wrote, which I walk you through the process of that image manipulation and how I zip on the fly. The entire code is there. You can download, take it. But that's what this blog is if you want to see that as well. So with that, this is my information. Again, I work at a company called Kentico. If you come across Kentico, my job is to help you, help you find the answer. If you ever want to talk about Azure, I like doing that. If you want to recruit some henchmen, you can definitely feel free to reach out to me. But I'd like to answer any questions if you have them, but that's really about it. How far over did I go? 2 minutes over. It's pretty good. Yes. Oh, I love it. I wasn't even expecting that. So Kentico so we have what we say 2 products now. We have Kentico EMS, which is Kentico as you know it, and then Kentico Cloud, which is a headless CMS, which is basically content management, and then you do whatever you want to on the front end to display it. Kentico EMS has a feature called Smart Search, which is based on Lucene.net behind the scenes. Kentico Cloud does not have search built into it yet because it's only been around about 6 months. We're still actively building out a lot of the feature set. We are looking into different search solutions that we can build into the product. I suspect it might be Azure Search based because Kentico Cloud lives in Azure anyway. And we're actually integrating Azure Search into Kentico EMS for faceted search. I don't know if it's going to replace the Smart Search Lucene.net based one, or if it's just going to be another way to search. I think it's actually might replace it, which is a good thing. And if you don't know, Smart Search is actually based on Lucene, just like every other search everywhere. Google Elasticsearch is based on Lucene. Everything runs. Lucene is like the guy behind everything when it comes to search. But we're actually integrating in Azure Search into our main product, which is Kentico EMS. I know they're talking about, we're looking into for Kentico Cloud, but it's just as a product, it's not mature enough yet. We're still actively developing it, and it's just something we haven't gotten to yet. Although I've kind of built a working solution for it that may become the I don't know if you say a boilerplate, but a foundation for them to look at it moving forward, because it's actually a fairly elegant solution if I would have coded the delete properly, which is funny because I've given this presentation like 3 times. I've never noticed that I had a coding error in it.
It takes this to delete it, so it's good enough.
That's right. There you go. It says it did it, so I don't know.
All the errors are wrong.
That's right. I'm sorry. No. So we're actively looking into that, and what's interesting is we released Kentico EMS, which is our main product. We have basically one major release a year. We do 3-month sprints where we kind of define what's going to be in the next 3 months of development. But Kentico Cloud gets updates every 2 weeks, so it's a much more aggressive development cycle. And then in the next few months, it wouldn't surprise me if we have something in there. It's just, as of right now, it's only been on the market for like somewhere around November. So it's just not there yet to handle everything and as far as search goes. So hence people like me making that solution to show you can search, you just have to make an Azure function to do it. But I give you all the code to do. Actually, I haven't made that blog yet. It's coming, but I'm going to give all the code to do that Azure search. I'm going to post that up on my blog. So you're going to be able to see all that.
Might just live stream.
Okay.
But if anybody wants to ask Bryan any more questions, go for it. But we'll just stop the live stream. So that way we're